So John, we're excited to have you on, man, and
Appreciate it.
Thank you enough, man. So
yeah, thank you. Appreciate the solid intro there. Hit the nail on the head on everything. So thank you.
Man. Cool. Well, I guess the first question is, man, so tell us kind of like how your day life is right now with working at home and getting ready for the PLL season. Hopefully there is one, and tell us kind of what you're doing with your workouts and how you're staying in shape right now and keep your mind right with work.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of you guys may or may not know, a lot of guys in the PLL have jobs outside of just lacrosse. There's definitely a very good contingency within the PLL that just work as coaches or just playing lacrosse and get to do that full time, which is awesome. And I hope that continues to grow and grow to a larger and larger number. For myself, I'm working in the energy industry. So during the day, I'm helping get power plants built all over the country. And then once the evening comes, that's when I can really start to focus on lacrosse. And so my day-to-day routine right now is a little bit different. Weight rooms aren't open, as you guys know. Turf fields are closed, so you can't go and get any training in like that. So the workouts that I've been doing have been really focused more on mobility and endurance. So at this point right now, what I'm doing is I'm going on a lot of runs. I think, in lacrosse, like you would never really expect to run more than 4 or 5 miles in a game if you had a very, very exerting game. But the average, we used to track this at Notre Dame. They used to put a little GPS on our back. The average that most guys were hitting was about 2 to 3 miles a game. So I used that as a general gauge for my endurance training. Try and run 2-3 miles most days of the week right now. And then I'm doing a lot of mobility. So, I mean, you might not realize that you guys are all, young, spry right now. But all the work you're doing, all the agility, all the different playing you're doing really puts a lot of strain on your hips and your lower back. So that's been a core target for me. I've been doing a lot of stretching. I've been doing a lot of yoga and different types of workouts like that. In terms of body weight stuff, everyone might have more or less access to different equipment at their home. Maybe they have a couple weights if they're lucky, whatever it is. Just trying to do a little bit of body weight exercise, things like lunges, things like push-ups, pull-ups, just whatever you can to keep some core strength going. That's going to be really important too. But that's kind of where I've been focusing my time really is, like I said, just kind of getting that endurance up, getting ready for the season, ready to run lots of shifts, and then also mobility to kind of help with injury prevention.
Yeah. I remember talking to you before this whole COVID-19 thing happened, and you were telling me that you would work like 10-hour days, 11-hour days, and then you would go to the gym late at night around like 12 in the morning, 11 at night, or 10 at night. And I was curious, maybe you could kind of run through that schedule for the boys so they can understand, like, hey, this is the commitment and this is how hard you need to work.
Absolutely. So my job, that I'm working right now is pretty demanding hours wise. I'll usually be starting at 9 a.m. in the morning and working, well into the evening, often, way past midnight, whatever it might be, but always trying to make some time in there. So my typical day, I mean, before this happened and when I was doing my regular work schedule would be, like you were going to school from 9 a.m. all the way until 10 p.m. going to get a workout in. So go to the gym and, typically do a run or a sprint, do some agility work, do my weight training, and then go back to the office until 1 or 2 a.m. So only leaves time for about 6 hours of sleep in there. But, like Coach was saying, it's worth it to get a couple hours of workouts in. Maintain a really consistent schedule so that I can be ready for the season when it comes up, even if it sometimes cuts into sleep a little bit. So, that's hopefully not an issue many of you guys are dealing with right now. I hope that you can find a little bit more balance in your schedule with school and other extracurriculars you might have going. But it's definitely important to kind of carve out some time in your schedule to make sure that you're getting in the kind of shape you need to be in to play lacrosse.
Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about, obviously, your high school playing days, kind of where you grew up, how the high school recruiting process went through for you? All right. And, how you ended up at Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you guys are all so lucky to be playing for a club like True. I mean, I didn't actually end up starting club lacrosse until I was in high school. I was very unaware of the club lacrosse scene beforehand. I grew up just outside Boston. There's a lot of great clubs out there, but just hadn't been exposed to any of that world, really. I grew up mostly a baseball player. And then in 8th grade, when push came to shove, had to choose one and ended up choosing lacrosse. And so grew up, like I said, in Sudbury, Massachusetts, which is a suburb 30 minutes west of Boston. Kind of came in not really knowing what to expect, not knowing how I would stack up against other guys, but, really made a lot of effort my freshman year between the fall and then winter to put on some weight. Was able to, have access to a great strength coach at our high school, which made it very, fortunate for me to be able to train at the level that I need to be trained to kind of start to put on some weight. I know a lot of you guys, might come into high school and might not have a lot of experience with weight training, but if you just, go around and ask some of the older guys on the team, that can be one of the best ways to learn. And I know we probably have some older guys on here too. And if you're a junior, senior, don't be shy about bringing a guy with you, telling a freshman, who lives near you that you can pick them up in the morning and go and get a weight lift in before classes start or whatever it is. It just really, for me, I was fortunate to have a lot of people around there who were willing to help me. When I was a freshman, I had a senior who was picking me up, like I just alluded to, in the morning, taking me to do my weight training before classes even started. And, I think just kind of having a support network like that, whether you're one of the older guys kind of starting that or a younger guy who's kind of, playing into it a little bit, I think that's just a really important way for you guys to kind of continue to develop. But for me, that's kind of how my high school career started, was with a lot of weight training with the lacrosse team. Was fortunate to make the team as a freshman. It was a year with a pretty talented team, so I wasn't getting playing time right away like I, wanted to. So what that really just meant for me was that I kind of made it my mission to always be the first guy at the field and then the last guy off it. So I was typically doing a half hour, maybe 45 minutes of wall ball and ground ball exercises before practice. And then after practice was forcing one of the juniors or one of the senior attackmen or midfielders to stay with me and do dodges until they wouldn't take it from me anymore. So, it basically was able to kind of, over the course of the first couple months of the season, work myself into a starting role. And then from there, it was fortunate to string together a couple good games. And as you guys know, a lot of the schools that you might be trying to get recruited to are in the Northeast. So playing high school lacrosse out there, you do get exposed to some recruiting. So during my freshman season, was able to catch the attention of a couple of local schools. And that's kind of when I really first realized I might be trying to play college lacrosse. Before that, it hadn't really occurred to me. So I kind of, like a lot of you guys, I did, went into, that I guess it was after my freshman year, summer, looking for a club team to play for. You guys lucky you already have a great one with coaches who know all the other coaches out there who can help you get recruited. So I was just, I was just a little bit in a different position where I was looking for that still. Was fortunate to find a program that maybe you guys have played against. Hopefully you guys are rivals and hate them, but was playing for Massachusetts. And then, so from that, was able to get recruited to Notre Dame in the fall of my sophomore year. And then I know the recruiting timelines are all different now. So this is, a different time, I guess, because now I think it's a little bit pushed back. But so after that, committed in the winter of my sophomore year. And then, the rest is history.
Hey, John, I'm a Massachusetts guy. I went to Falmouth, and I remember Lincoln Sudbury battling and good competition there. One of the things that you kind of touched on very lately was the fact that you were a multi-sport athlete. You were a football and lacrosse guy. I don't know if you played any other sports. Do you feel like that kind of helped you in terms of your athleticism and drive, getting in the weight room, just being around other athletes all year round and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would absolutely encourage you guys to be playing whatever sports you want to be. You shouldn't feel like you're forced to do multiple, but I think that if you like a sport, there's absolutely no reason you should feel any ounce of pressure not to play it. You guys have plenty of time to practice. I know the practice sessions with True are flexible. You guys can make those work in the off season however you might. want to. But if you guys want to play football, hockey, basketball, soccer, whatever it is, there's numerous benefits that come from those sports. I mean, in college, I can't think of more than, a very small fraction of guys who weren't playing multiple sports. A lot of football guys, a lot of hockey guys, some soccer guys, some basketball guys mixed in there. But all those different sports have different kind of cross-training benefits, whether it's the physicality and strength in football, whether it's the endurance in soccer or the agility that you need in basketball. All these different sports can almost be used as a training, weapon to make you a better lacrosse player. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
So, John, so obviously you ended up going to Notre Dame, but can you tell us a little bit about some of the other schools that you were getting recruited by, and what made you pick Notre Dame?
Absolutely. So I kind of created a list of criteria that were, really important to me when I was in the recruiting process. I was, like I said, lucky to be in an area where I was getting recruited. I know that you don't always have, a vast, big list that you can pick from. And really, I wasn't getting recruited by any of the other ACC schools or any of the other top teams. I was more so looking at, I guess now some of them are a little bit better, but a lot of the Ivies who, when I was getting recruited, that wasn't really all that special from a lacrosse standpoint. They were all kind of down in the dumps at that point. And then Notre Dame, and then another school that back in the day wasn't too good, but Penn State, who now is really good. So for some of you guys, it might be like, wow, you had the best schools recruiting you. But at the time, that was a bunch of teams who were in the 20s and 30s in the rankings. And so, what my criteria really came down to was, you go to a university with, the hopes that you might be able to play, but that can't be your top thing. Playing can't be the only aspect of the university that you look at. You have to be considering, a bunch of other things, like being able to leverage your lacrosse skills to get a good education is, something that you should not take for granted. If you have a list of schools and, there's kind of something you're looking at that you might want to put a little bit more weight on, you should seriously consider, the different kind of advantageous positions you can put yourself in going to a higher academic school. So that was one of my bigger decision makings. Another kind of big decision was, would you feel comfortable at the school if lacrosse were taken away from you? So God forbid some horrible injury happens to you and you're not able to play lacrosse ever again. Well, am I going to want to go to this school? Do I, like the social aspect of the school? Do I like the campus? Do I think that there's majors and courses that I'm going to be interested in? So there's just a couple of different, boxes that I was trying to check for each of these schools. And when it came, when push came to shove, ultimately Notre Dame had checked the most boxes. There was, some other items that kind of made me choose Notre Dame, like my cousin who graduated there in 2001 as an attackman. My sister was committed to Notre Dame at that time. So there was a bit of a family tie there too. But I just thought that Notre Dame was the best balance of lacrosse and academics for me.
That's great. So you get to Notre Dame. You're low man on the totem pole now. Okay, mm-hmm. You're a freshman. You got to earn your stripes just like every freshman does. Tell us how you came into Notre Dame. I believe at Notre Dame you got to earn your helmet, right? Before you start, you get a Notre Dame helmet. Talk a little bit about that, and talk about like how you had to go in there and prove yourself.
I mean, again, like I hope this isn't a cop-out answer, but it's really the help you get from the guys around you, which is kind of a cop-out answer. But I mean, ultimately, you need to want it. You need to be willing to go out there. You need to be willing to ask for help, and you need to be willing to put in the most work of anyone at your position if you're competing for time. So ultimately, it's on you to take advantage of the different resources you might have. But I had. Whether it was Hank Williams, who was at LSM, great LSM, couple year starter there, who, was taking me to the mulch hills with them. We were doing hills after practice every single day. I mean, that was terrible. I wanted to throw up at the end of that every single time. But, he was reassuring me this will be worth it. And, ultimately it was. And it was, things like that, running hills, or whether it was getting ahead in my classes and learning time management skills and making sure that, okay, well, if I efficiently get my homework done, then I can get another lift done in the dorm. And I was doing all kinds of extra lifts to put on a little bit of extra weight. I wasn't small. I kind of came in, I think, at 190, but by the time I was leaving Notre Dame, I was around 220. And so, I mean, I think that just kind of being able to pick apart, different things that you can work on. I was going, a lot to the strength coaches and asking for different agility drills I could work on. And so I spent a lot of times in the morning before my classes working on agility drills on the turf and just kind of seeing what I could improve footwork wise. And then I think, another kind of intangible with Notre Dame was just that I was able to learn from Jerry Byrne, who now, as a lot of you guys might know, is the head coach at Harvard. But Jerry's one of the great defensive minds in the college lacrosse game. And so going and doing film sessions with him, you don't need the greatest defensive mind in the game, but just being able to pick apart your own game in film sessions and watching. And then also on top of that, watching other players play and different aspects you might be able to pick up from their game. One thing he loved doing was going and watching old games and watching guys who had gone to Notre Dame who had some of the attributes like really good off-ball communication or really good off-ball footwork, and just looking and watching those guys and saying, well, what did you think was good about that? And just trying to, come up with a list of, okay, well, this guy was moving really well in space. He did a good job staying sideways. Looks like he's communicating clearly and using directional appointments as well to help with the visual aspect in case someone didn't hear him. So I think that, it kind of comes down to making sure that you're really hitting every piece of it. You're trying to get better on the field, any aspect as a defender. Obviously, you'd love to be good one-on-one, but just as important is going to be your footwork and your off-ball defense knowledge. And then also there's no excuse for not getting in the best shape you can get in and then getting as strong as you can.
I wanted to ask a question. Obviously, Jerry Byrne is usually a guy that keeps like the collar on all of his defenders. Okay. You were an exciting player to watch, doing a good job of timing up checks, getting the ball on the ground, going fast. Was it hard to kind of maybe gain the trust from him to allow you to play the way you did? I mean, yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I feel like I've seen guys play, at Notre Dame, they're usually not playing the way you do. So I don't know. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair comment. And, I think I spent my fair share of time in the doghouse my freshman year because of it. I would, I'd like to think that, I'd spent a lot of my freshman year kind of learning the defensive system and maybe holding back a little bit more than I wanted to. But like you said, it's just about gaining trust. And then also on top of that, I think the way I was able to take a lot of those risks in the middle of the field and maybe going for checks, like you said, and timing, things like that, is just because I always was fortunate to have close defenders behind me who were, communicating things like, hey, John, we got numbers, you can go do this. Just very, very vocal defenders behind me. Guys like Eddie Glazner, who, was always sure to be talking about, if you're playing close defense, you have the full view of the field. Everything that's going on as a close defender, right? You can see if someone's getting behind the riding midfield, or you can see if you have an extra number and maybe you can do something aggressive. So was just lucky to have vocal people like that behind me, but also it's prioritizing what's most important, which is learning team defense, getting your footwork down. And then once you have all of that kind of base work done, then you're going to be able to put yourself in positions that you want to be in without risking the integrity of the defense. That was something that he focused on, frankly, which was if you're able to, make sure that you're always sideways and you're always communicating and you're in the best position possible, you're going to be in a place to make the plays that you want more often than if you're just going about and running around and chasing sticks and whatnot. So I think that, it's at the end of the day, maybe it was a little bit of a longer leash, but it was kind of based on some of those same team defense principles as the rest of ND defense.
John, that's pretty awesome. One thing that usually happens at all Division I schools is that, the first thing you do, and I know they do this at Notre Dame, the first thing you do when you get on campus and you start fall ball is before you even hit the field, you have some sort of run test, lift test, or something along those lines. Can you tell us what the Notre Dame test is, and what you guys test out before you guys actually hit the field?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, you know what, I'm out a couple years, so I don't know if they do it anymore, but the first thing we always did was a beep test. So it's a pacer test. I believe it was about 30 yards there and back, and there's a beep that goes off to tell you when it starts, and then you have to return to the start line before the next beep. So it's really just a time test. You could look it up on YouTube, called the pacer test. It's terrible. It progressively gets faster and faster and faster. You don't feel like you're running all that fast, and then all of a sudden you're out of breath and you're sprinting and you can't, catch your breath because the next beep goes off. So, I mean, I think most colleges will provide you with packet before you end up there, where they'll have some kind of, guidelines for how you should be training the summer before you get there. My suggestion would be to do that and more. Don't try and skimp by. I think the more you can do to prepare for those kinds of tests, it really stands out. Every freshman comes in pretty good shape, I would say, probably better than a lot of the guys in the upper classes, just because those guys might get complacent. But if you can really put yourself head and heels, head and shoulder above the rest of your class, then you're going to be able to kind of come in a little bit of an advantage. And that's one of those no excuses kind of things where, you're completely controlling how much time you're going for runs and how much endurance work you're doing. So that's kind of one of those things where it's really just about wanting it,
Absolutely. So obviously you played LSM. I was in LSM. I think it's the best position in the sport of lacrosse. All right.
Biased, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it is. But anyways, tell me why you love the position so much, and why you love to just play, the position LSM.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I started out as a close defender and in high school, and then I started taking some face-offs as a sophomore, and kind of realized that I really liked a lot of the aspects of the face-off game, whether it was actually taking them or eventually just being on the wing. I think that the LSM position is in a really unique position where you're kind of that spark between defense and offense, and you're in a position to make a lot of really pivotal plays in the game. Whether that's a big ground ball for face-off late in the game, whether that's a big ride and ultimately being able to turn it back to your offense, whether it's transition coming out of defense. You're just in a lot of very pivotal, fast moments of the game. And I think that, that's kind of unique because there's not a lot of positions. As a close defender, you get to be a part of every single defensive possession, but ultimately you're not going to be doing quite as much on the offensive end. So, that was always the fun part for me, was getting to see both sides of the ball. That being said, I think there's something to be said for being a part of every possession as a close defender too, which is pretty fun. So, maybe a little bit biased towards scoring goals, but there's no hate from me towards the close defenders we got on here.
How important would you say it is to have some offensive game and to be able to play the offensive side of the field as an LSM? Because you see a lot of high school kids or a lot of youth kids, they're LSMs. They go down and play defense. Instead of running in transition, they just go straight to the box. Okay.
To me, it seems more and more important, honestly. It seemed more important today than it was 10 years ago, maybe when I was first getting recruited. But I feel like I go on and I turn a college game on now, and like LSMs are scoring left and right. And, I think that some of the guys who might have started that momentum would be guys like Larkin Kemp and Alec Tullett from Brown, if you remember them. Yeah. Some of the best transition polls I can remember from the last decade. And I just think that at this point, it's kind of par for the course, is that the LSM is kind of expected to be, a great wing guy, but also able to hold his own and leading transition. Doesn't mean you have to shoot at 1,000,000 miles per hour, but you got to be, have good enough stick skills where you can start the break, pass it to the lead guy, potentially get a feed back and finish on the crease. You just have to be comfortable ball handling. And I think that, as you get more and more comfortable ball handling, that's going to only help you on your defensive side of the game. If you develop a little bit of offensive sense for the game, you're going to know what other people might be thinking when they're in transition and you're defending it. And then also, you can always continue to work on your stick skills, and that's only going to help you as you try and get more and more interceptions on defense.
Tell me a little bit about ground balls. Obviously, that's a huge part of your game. Me as a player, I always said to myself, I want to be the best ground ball guy on every team I ever play on. okay? And that would allow me to get a position on a team, okay? You were the best ground ball guy at Notre Dame. You were one of the best ground ball guys in the country during your time there, and you're one of the best ground ball guys in the PLL. How important are ground balls to your game? And tell us a little bit about like what ground balls actually mean to you.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's really a mentality. You know, you tell yourself, I'm going to be the best ground ball guy, because ultimately, at the end of the day, what makes a good ground ball guy is someone who's going to stick his nose down, get dirty, not be afraid to soak a check or two, and is really just going to be doing it for his teammates. Ultimately, I think of it as like as probably the most important part of my game. I think you were saying that it's, a big part, but I would say it's the most important part because, like you said, you can always earn your spot on a team as a ground ball guy. It just really takes the kind of mentality of wanting it more than the other guy. Even if someone might be a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, if they just show an ounce of doubt in their ground ball, then that leaves an opportunity for you to get in there. And I think that, in terms of working on it, there's a million different drills you can do, but at the end of the day, it's really just a mentality type thing.
Absolutely. Well, in the middle of the field, you like to throw some checks every now and then in between the boxes. You got your little belly rub check that I've seen, maybe an over the head, maybe a ding dong. Can you talk a little bit about some of your favorite checks that you would like to throw, out there? Maybe a can opener, you tell me.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, and the can opener is probably what I'm throwing 80% of the time. It's just a good volume check. You can throw them, annoy the offensive guy as much as you want with them, and you don't really get out of position. It's kind of like being able to go fishing and, not really putting your the rest of the defense at risk. I mean, I like to think, like I said, I don't ever put our defense in too tough of a position. So I try and keep it a little bit tame when I can. I think a can opener is great because, listen, if you time it well, it's very, very hard for an offensive guy to protect against a can opener. And can opener being a poke check where you try and put your stick in between his body and his stick, almost like sliding it across his chest so that it's inside of his stick, and then you go out so his stick goes up like that and the ball falls out. So it's really just a poke check. It's a fancy word for a poke check where you're trying to flick your wrist so you get his stick to go out.
Now, my question with that, John, because the best guy who I've ever seen be able to throw a can opener was a Notre Dame guy, and his name was DJ Driscoll. Okay, he could get it in there. Now, are you throwing the can opener two hands or one hand?
One hand. So you get the full extension with one hand, and then you use the offensive guy's body as leverage to pull the stick out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's a great low risk check. Like you said, I love like every once in a while it's fun to go over the head, and you're going to have opportunities to do so and not put your defense at risk every once in a while. If it's a situation where you have some numbers, maybe you're up a man, whatever it might be, there's plenty of time to throw checks like that. You can throw a one-handed wrap and still stay in good body position. I wouldn't recommend throwing a one-handed wrap if someone's dodging on you, because then they're going to get in on your body and they're going to kind of control that dodge. But if you're in the middle of the field, you have a lot of creative license to be able to throw the checks that you want to throw. So, I definitely would encourage you to, keep working on your checks if you're a young guy. And I think it can be, implemented in a smart way where you're not putting your defense at risk. It's just all about knowing the opportunities to do so. If someone's dodging to go score a goal, it's not the best time to go over their head because it's kind of all or nothing. But if they're clearing the ball, or it's, maybe someone who's, less comfortable in offense, like a D-midi. That's honestly, and no offense to the D-middies on here, but I used to spend half my time in transition chasing D-middies because I knew they had slightly less good stick skills than offensive guys, and my checks were going to work better against them than it was going to work against offensive guys.
Absolutely. So tell us about your matchups versus Sergio Perkovic in practice. Did you guys ever throw the gloves down and go after it? Or
He's a fiery guy. I knew very well if I won a matchup to just walk away and not say anything, because it was very likely going to leave him in a not happy position. But he was winning his fair share too. So he definitely would get angry if I was slashing him a little bit too hard. He might run at me full speed and try and lower the shoulder next dodge. But playing against a guy like that, I mean, you kidding me? That's as good practice as you're going to get playing against someone who looks like they should be a tight end in the NFL instead. So, I mean, he was always like pushing the envelope in practice. And he's competitive. Like, he doesn't want to lose. He doesn't want to, even give up one turnover. So those are the guys you got to surround yourself with, right? Is if you're thinking about what's an offensive guy like on my team that I can, go and practice with more, it's that guy who kind of has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, a little bit of an FU mentality. Like, okay, you just beat me this rep. Well, guess what? I'm going to kick your butt the next rep. So that's the guy that you want to be around, frankly,
Absolutely.
I actually talked to Sergio today, and I said, "Hey, anything I should ask John about?" And he said, "Yeah, ask him about his stick." All right. He said that you're all you use is traditional mesh. Is that right, or no mesh, just traditional stringing? You mind actually? I'm sure some of the kids actually, it's like a fun question. Like, what's your weapon of choice? Do you use a full length stick? Do you cut it down? Like, what head do you use? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can go through the rundown. So right now, using all Epic stuff, that's my sponsor. I actually think they have really good gear, so I'm not trying to sell anyone here. I think it's good stuff. So, feel free to explore that. But, I've always used a full-length stick. I had a coach in 8th grade who said, if you're cutting it down, you're really just kind of limiting the weapon that you're able to use. And I kind of took by that mentality. I know Jerry Byrne, for example, played with a shorter stick. Playing with a shorter stick can make you a little bit more nimble on offense. It can give you a little bit more creativity throwing checks. But for me, it was always important having a little bit of reach as a guy who's 5'10". I'm not exactly the tallest guy, so I needed all the reach I could get. But then, I guess the meat of the question with the traditional, when I was a sophomore in high school, the trainer at our high school, Lincoln Sudbury, Ondo, kind of told me, hey, I think you should consider trying this. It's maybe a little bit different than the mesh setup you're using, but I think it would really complement your game well. He thought it would be good for ground balls and face-offs, and also for kind of, making some moves on the offensive end and dodging a little bit more just because of the softer feel. And, after that, I liked so many aspects of it that there was really no going back. I think, like with traditional, maybe you might lose a little bit of hold, it might be a little bit whippier, it might be harder to shoot. But for me, just the benefit of having such a high pocket for ground balls was always outweighing all those other things. So, if you're a kid out there who has a lot of time on his hands right now, hanging out at home, and you want to order some leathers and give it a shot, I would definitely encourage you, because I think it can definitely open up a lot of aspects of your game. I'm really fortunate to have had Ondo. Without Ondo, I wouldn't have known. And from that day until right now, Ondo has strung every single stick for me. He recently actually passed away from cancer, and love him to death. Would say if anyone is looking to help out a family in need, then look up the Ondo Family Fund and donate there, because Ondo really gave me so much in this game, and I owe a lot of where I am to his sticks. And they always say it's the wizard, not the wand, but I always like to give the Ondo wand a little bit of credit for where I've been able to go.
So John, I have a quick question. Obviously, you played club lacrosse, you went through the club circuit, you got recruited. What's the best advice you can give defensemen out there who are playing club and they're trying to get recruited? What do you think is the best thing they can do during these tournaments or doing these games to showcase themselves and get themselves out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, honestly, the biggest thing, and it might not be the most glamorous, is just like loud communication, showing that team defense, and then also hustling every single second of every single game. There's going to be kids who throw crazy takeaway checks. Like, ultimately, that isn't really all that appealing, I don't think, to college coaches. They don't want someone who's going to be out there being a liability. What they're looking for is really good defenders, people who can cover their guy one-on-one, and then also people who show an ability to learn team defense. But then the last is almost seen as an intangible, which is just hardworking guys. Like, be diving out of bounds to get the shot when you can on the end line. Hustle to every single ground ball, whether or not you think you're going to get there in time. Maybe you get a bottom hand poke check at the last second, whatever it might be. I think like the hustle, the team defense are two of the biggest separators, because that's just going to be two of the things that you're not seeing in every single player.
Absolutely. Couple more questions here. I know you probably got to get your workout in, but tell us what it was like to with time management as a student athlete at Notre Dame. Obviously, Notre Dame is no easy school. All right, so tell us what it was like to be a student at Notre Dame, but also be a lacrosse player, and how you manage that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, it just comes down to time management and making sure you have a good grasp of everything you need to do. So for me, that always was making schedules. I always knew when my assignments were due. I had, goals set for certain days. Okay, this essay is due on Friday. Well, I'm going to have my outline by Tuesday. I'm going to have my first draft by Wednesday. And that way I can spend Thursday reviewing it, And that way I didn't find myself on Thursday night cramming in a full night worth of trying to finish a paper and, risking losing a night of doing whatever training I might want to do that night. So for me, it was just about smart time management, because then that allowed me to, practice every single day and strength train with my team. It allowed me to get in the extra work I wanted to do, and it allowed me to do well in the classes that I was in. Because ultimately, the thing that's on the top of our mind is, you go somewhere to play lacrosse, but all the universities you're going to go to are going to be very demanding, and you just need to be ready to kind of, change from that high school mindset of everything is kind of laid out so properly for you that, all of a sudden in university, it's kind of on your plate to be managing your time. And it's on your plate, like no one's going to feel bad for you if you forget to hand in a homework assignment, or no one's going to feel bad for you if you miss the run test. This is all on your plate as you're transitioning from middle school to high school, and then from high school to college. You're getting more and more responsibility, and more is on your plate. And so you just have to be ready to kind of rise to the occasion and, just take on more responsibility in those instances.
Yeah, I would say, one other thing that we have trouble with sometimes with our players, and maybe you can talk about it, is getting our guys into the weight room and, making sure they're going into the weight room on their own time on a regular basis. Can you talk about how important the weight room is to you, your training, and how often you're in the weight room? Because, a lot of these kids, they go in the weight room maybe one day a week, okay? Whereas, you and I both know that's not how it's going to work, So talk about how important having a regular routine workout in the weight room is.
Yeah, I mean, consistency is just, it can't be understated when it comes to strength training. I think that, I'm not a strength coach, but I've learned a lot over the past 10 years of working with, very high level professional strength coaches. And I would say that, like, maybe one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, would be consistency. The other being maybe form. I'd say those two are kind of hand in hand. If you're going to be working out a lot, you need to make sure your form is perfect, but it really can't be understated how important it is for you guys to be getting bigger and stronger, especially on the defensive end of the ball. I think as a freshman in high school, if I hadn't put on, I think it was 40 pounds from fall to spring, I probably wouldn't have made that varsity team. I would have been a little bit too undersized and probably wouldn't have made varsity until my sophomore year. I think in college, if I hadn't put on another 30 pounds, I probably wouldn't have been the player I was and wouldn't have been able to, play at the highest level at that point and be able to defend guys like Miles Jones and defend guys like Sergio in practice. You're just going to continue to play bigger, stronger, faster players. And something my high school coach told me that was good advice is, as a guy who's 5'10", you're not going to be the biggest guy on any team. You're probably not going to be the fastest guy on any team. So what you have to do is you have to make sure that you're as big and as fast as you can be so that you can, accentuate your other strengths. Maybe you're one of the smartest players, or maybe you're crafty, or maybe you throw really good checks. Well, that's all great. But there's those kind of things I've been saying there, you have no excuse. You have no excuse not to get in the best shape you can get in. You have no excuse not to, be working out a couple times a week and getting stronger and bigger. It just comes down to consistency of strength training. And then also on the nutrition side, just making sure that you're eating right, you're eating a lot and you're eating healthy.
Absolutely.
So when you obviously being like transitioning to like the PLL, like, you know, walk us through, I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, walk us through like last summer, you're getting ready for game week, like how you need to essentially schedule yourself to accomplish those things. I mean, you talk about having like, you know, really good like self-control, discipline, wake up, you know, work out, you know, go to work and then fly out of town for a game and stuff like that. Walk us through what a PLL guy kind of goes through there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I typically would spend my Monday trying to learn the other team's offense. So Monday was 2 days after our previous game. So still kind of, you know, going to get a workout in, maybe a lighter long distance run and some, you know, lighter weightlifting, maybe going for speed more so than strength. But was really the focus of my Monday was learning the other team's offense. So as a whole, and then, you know, like I said, getting some of that lighter training in. Tuesday was hitting the weights pretty hard, probably doing some sprints as well, just getting my body right, making sure that I'm, you know, recovered, but also getting, you know, maintaining strength for the next game. And then Tuesday, I was also spending a little bit more time on my individual matchups. So, you know, focusing in less so on the other team's offense as a whole, but more so on the individual players and their tendencies and looking for, you know, maybe potential weaknesses that could be taken advantage of. But then, you know, as the week progressed going towards Wednesday, was really looking more so for another kind of high intensity lifting day with sprints. So, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday, kind of those high intensity days. And then moving into Thursday, and Thursday was more of kind of like a lighter workout, probably doing a lot more mobility work, kind of getting ready for the weekend ahead. And then also Thursday focusing again kind of on that other team's schematic and just making sure that I know the offense they're running so that, you know, as soon as a midfielder elevates in the top left corner of the box, you know, then I know what's going on. I can help the guys around me know what's going on. And we know that, you know, the crease guy is going to pop out the back and it's going to get populated from the guy at X or whatever the play might be. Just being able to kind of pick out those kinds of things and knowing that, you know, I know if Sergio has the ball, he's going to split to his left and roll back to his right. You know what I mean? Just trying to find these tendencies in players and offensives as a whole really is a good way to spend some of your time leading up. But then I think it's really important to get a couple of high intensity days in there and then also a couple of lower intensity days where maybe you're working on endurance or mobility or you're doing weight training, but you're focused on the speed and the quality of the lift, not as much on the weight. So I think I was kind of sandwiching 2 higher intensity days in Tuesday, Wednesday with a couple lower intensity days in Monday, Thursday. And then Friday, obviously, like you said, it's travel day. So for me, that was really just like, you know, maybe taking advantage of some of the time flying to wherever we're going to watch some film. And then when I got to the hotel, making sure that I was all stretched out and ready for practice on that Friday night.
Absolutely. Well, this is awesome, man. We're going to open it up here for a couple questions. So, boys, if any of you have questions for John, please raise your hand.
See Brody?
Brody? Where is he?
I can only see so many of these screens at once, which is the problem here. But Brody, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brody.
When you went to Notre Dame, what was one of your biggest reasons you went?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question, Brody. So I think one of the biggest reasons, like I was touching on, was that it just was a really good academic school. Actually, at the time, I thought I wanted to go into engineering. I loved math, and they had a good engineering program. And then also I knew that Notre Dame had a good alumni network. So there was lots of, you know, people who had gone there and graduated who could help me get a job after school if I wasn't going to end up playing professional lacrosse, or if, like I'm doing, I was going to play professional lacrosse and do something else. So I think that was, you know, a big part of the reason. Ultimately ended up being a business major, but also a great business school, so it worked out well.
All right, Forrest, you got a question? Go ahead.
Yeah. What was your hardest matchup?
Hardest matchup? That's a good one. This is one I don't like because it never, you know, it's never feels easy to come up with the hardest matchup. I had to go hardest matchup though. Maybe, and this is going to be a name that might not be as much of a household name, but Jade Ray. So he was from my rival high school actually, and he ended up going to Loyola, and he had a great career, finished as an All-American there. But Jade Ray was one of the shiftiest, fastest attackmen I ever played against, and this is when I was in high school playing at close and LSM. So I would cover him, 3 or 4 times a year in high school because we'd be playing him twice in league, in the conference playoffs, and the playoffs. So I mean, he was always on my mind. This was a guy that just was very shifty. I never minded playing against the larger guys. I always felt like I did a good enough job strength training that I didn't care if someone was going to try and run through me. I felt comfortable. I always didn't like playing against the shifty guys, kind of like Jay was.
Jack Hare. Jack Hare.
What drew you into lacrosse?
What drew me in?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good question. So like I said, I loved baseball, and honestly, if I had the choice, I might have been a lacrosse baseball player, not a lacrosse football player in high school. But I mean, I what really drew me in was just that lacrosse was kind of a great way to not only get some of kind of the physical aspects of football, but also there's some creativity in there. And I just have a lot of fun, doing all the different things, maybe in the middle of the field, like, being able to go and chase a takeaway check or go and run transition. So I think there's a little bit of creativity in lacrosse that some structured sports like baseball or football have a little bit less of because, it's just they're a little bit more formalized, I would say, than fluid like lacrosse is.
All right, we got time for 2 more questions. AJ?
When did you decide, I want to play defense?
That's a good question. That is a really good question. I mean, in 6th grade, I want to say I got a long pole. That sounds right. But I was still playing midfield and long pole, playing offensive mid and long stick, just close defense, maybe through 8th grade. I guess when it kind of came down to it, I was a lot better at long pole than I was midfield, so I knew I kind of had to get serious about one. And when 8th grade rolled around, I chose defense, and it just was a better fit for me.
All right, last question, Tyler.
Yeah. So, what was a good place to have your grades at, or your GPA at, to get into Notre Dame?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's a little bit of a moving target. So it changes. It matters. Who else is applying? If you're part of a recruiting class that has a bunch of guys who have 4.0s, well, maybe they can get a guy in who has a 3.0. But I would say, if you're trying to go to a school like that, you should be prepared to be getting 3.5, 3.6, 3.7 in high school. Those are the kind of grades where a coach is going to say, you know what, I can get this kid in no matter what. You know what, if it's him or the kid who has a 3.2, I'm going to have a lot easier time getting the kid who has a 3.6 in. So, I think that there's, you should be chasing as high grades as you can get, obviously. But I think once you get to that 3.5, 3.6, 3.7 range, then you're in a little bit of a competitive advantage almost. I'll turn it back to Coach. Is that what you're seeing still, or?
Absolutely. We tell and train our kids that academics come first. Mm-hmm. And you should pick the school first, based off of academics before lacrosse.
My coach used to say, if you could add 0.2 to your GPA or take 0.2 off of your 40 time, you should choose the GPA 9 times out of 10 because that's going to help you way more.
Absolutely. Well, John, man, this was awesome, man. Can't thank you enough for getting on and just talking to our guys and these players. Mm-hmm. Everybody looks up to you. We're excited to watch you play, hopefully this season, mm-hmm. and keep doing what you're doing, man. You're crushing it out there, and you're an inspiration for a lot of these kids. All right.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys. Really appreciate everyone turning out for this, and thank you for all the great questions. So hopefully we'll see some of you guys around coaching in the near future.